magnífico reitor da Universidade de Lisboa, caros colegas, amigos e família, caros companheiros de trabalho e de todos os dias, minhas senhoras e meus senhores, amigos e colegas, tenho um pedido a fazer-vos, que espero que me compreendam. Mas devido à presença de tantos colegas e bons amigos que vêm dos quatro cantos do mundo, eu senti que deveria fazer a minha intervenção em inglês. Desse facto, peço desde já desde já a vossa compreensão e perdão, sobretudo daqueles que não poderão entender tudo o que eu irei dizer. Dear colleagues and friends, it is for me a great honor and pleasure to have here with us today so many good friends. I am really emotionally touched by this gathering of people with whom I developed a deep friendship beyond science that we debated in so many intense fashion. On this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, I would like to give you not a classical lecture or a last lesson, as we say in Portugal, but rather a brief account of the way I view my own academic life. It will be biased, I'm sure, but I hope it will help you to know me beyond the cold listing of CV items, papers, PhD students, functions performed, posts held, conferences attended, etc., etc. I would like from the start to say that I had several passions, or better said, inclinations, with various degrees of intensity. I would like to say from the start that I had several passions, or better said, inclinations with various degrees of intensity along my lifetime. Teaching, being a professor, was never one, strangely, not until much later in life. But funny enough, I had a neighbor who, when I was a boy, passing by his front door, always called me Senhor Professor. I thought he was crazy, but in fact, I did realize he was being pathetic. At secondary school, I was very curious of the phenomena underlying physical reality, and that led me to chemistry. My father owned a pharmacy, and it was easy for me to build a separate white chemistry laboratory in the attic of our house. It's not there anymore. This lab ended when I prepared hydrogen sulfide with a very leaky apparatus, you know what hydrogen sulfide is, and filled the house with an odor that prompted my mother to forbid any further development of such laboratory. I could have blown the roof, but I didn't, even though I went as far as preparing hydrogen, you can imagine. I did most of my secondary schooling at Colégio Moderno, whose headmaster was the father of Mário Soares, one of our leading politicians. Mário Soares was my history teacher at the college. That was the beginning of my learning of culture, society, and politics well beyond science. Subsequently, I decided to become a chemical engineer, and I enrolled at the Technical Institute at the Technical University. As some of you well know, we are presently in the process of merging the two main universities in Lisbon. So pharmacy will be closer to engineering, and that, in a way, completes my personal circle. But back in those days, the early 60s, we were under a dictatorship and had no freedom of speech or association, or, of course, the right for public demonstrations. On top of that, an uprising started in the Portuguese former colonies, and the government decided to fight back. For almost 15 years, 30,000 young Portuguese were sacrificed in a useless and totally unfair war. These were reasons for the majority of students who were aware of the hardship of so many people, the lack of freedom, and who were in the first line to be drafted to this unjust war, to become politically very active. And all this became my second, not really a passion, but a strong involvement in politics through the Students' Union, following the 1962 famous student crisis that strongly challenged the dictatorship. I ended up in jail as a political prisoner for over a year, and that was an important turning point in my life. Because it would be too messy to go back to the School of Engineering after the period served in jail, I decided then to enroll in the School of Pharmacy, because it followed my love affair for chemistry, and anyway, there was a pharmacy tradition in our family. I finished the first 3 years, a bachelor degree, and started working on a subject not far from chemistry. Biochemistry is applied to food science. Amino acid, fatty acid analysis, enzyme kinetics of milk clotting by proteases extracted from an artichoke, traditionally used for making sheep cheese in Portugal. In the meantime, this was '69, the faculties of pharmacy in Lisbon and Coimbra were reopened. Therefore, after a short return to engineering, I decided to finish the licenciatura in pharmacy while working in this biochemistry lab. In 1972, another turning point in the start of another passion, this time with a stronger involvement. At the time, the biochemistry professor at our Faculty of Pharmacy, Professor Silveira, here with us today, had been invited to start a medicines control laboratory at the Portuguese National Institute of Health, Ricardo Jorge. The 1972 FIP Annual Congress took place in Lisbon, and John G. Wagner was awarded the FIP Hurst-Madsen Medal for Excellence in Pharmaceutical Sciences. Professor Silveira happened to be the local organizer for the FIP meeting and asked the different participants for training periods and industrial placements for some of his final year students to work at this medicines laboratory. One of the placements he obtained was, fortunately for me, at Wagner's lab. I distinctly remember when Professor Silveira invited me to the medicines laboratory and asked me if I would be willing to learn pharmacokinetics with Wagner. I remember having said that I have never heard of such a word, but it sounded Greek, it sounded good. At the time, I was involved in enzyme kinetics work, and I really liked it. So I decided to come to Ann Arbor, Michigan, and there started my lifelong love affair with pharmacokinetics. The training period was short, and I came back to Portugal, having in mind to get support for a PhD scholarship with Wagner and return to Michigan. In the meantime, I had another short interaction with politics. Our Carnation Revolution took place in '74. These were times of enjoyment, optimism, and a feeling of freedom. I got deeply involved with some of my colleagues here with us today, I've seen them, in the workers' representation at the National Institute of Health. But the idea of a PhD in the States never faded away. I finally was fortunate to be awarded a Fulbright and the Portuguese government scholarship, which enabled me to spend the next 5 years working in Ann Arbor to follow the very demanding PhD program at the College of Pharmacy, and I'm looking at what an eminent. It was a unique experience for someone like me. For a while, I kept collaboration with Dr. Wagner and revisited Ann Arbor later. The problem started when I came back in 1980. The Medicines Control Laboratory was really not the most appropriate environment for research in my field. But I kept this job along with one part-time professorship at the Faculty of Pharmacy. Within Professor Silveira's research group, doing therapeutic drug monitoring in hospitals and bioequivalence studies. In 1988, I became associate professor, and in 1998, full professor at the Faculty of Pharmacy, and was able to build a small research group of my own. Professor Breimer mentioned this afternoon the, as we call it, nerve-wracking examination that we have to go through in order to become a professor with all the balls black and white. But my last passion and turning point was about to come. International involvement in medicine regulation following Portugal joining the European Community in 1986. I was invited to join the Biotechnology Working Party of the CPMP, everybody knows what CPMP is, by the then head of the Portuguese agency. This was my first contact with the European institutions of drug regulation in Brussels, as well as with the Portuguese Drug Regulatory Agency. I soon realized that where the action was would be the CPMP, not the Biotechnology Working Party, and there I started my apprenticeship and love for drug regulation that we now call regulatory science. At the same time, I realized how much work had to be done in the regulatory field, both in Europe and Portugal. I was a privileged witness and somehow actor in what has happened on both levels in the past 25 years. Harmonization of requirements in Europe and across the world, International Convention on Harmonization, birth of the European Medicines Agency in London, transposing of the European drug directives into the Portuguese law, development of the European drug regulatory system into a full-fledged system covering all kinds of drug products and medical devices, the birth and rise of biotechnology and advanced therapies, including advanced drug delivery systems, liposomes, nanomedicine, the things we talked about this morning. During my long relation with drug regulation, I should mention a few relevant facts. For the CPMP, CHMP, I participated as a pharmacokinetics assessor in many centralized procedures, mainly covering for drugs for the treatment of cancer, HIV, and neurodegenerative diseases, and in scientific advice requests. In 1998, I was appointed chairman of the group who undertook the job of revising the bioavailability bioequivalence guideline dating from 1991. This was a difficult job for a group with a majority of clinicians and pharmacists and very few pharmacokineticists. Among them, my dear friend Martin Olling, here with us today as well. We finished the job, but as far as I was concerned, we only went halfway in incorporating the new developments in biopharmaceutics classification system and individual bioequivalence, in spite of a very fruitful visit to US FDA. Due to this activity in the past 10-15 years, I have been invited to many international conferences acting like an ambassador for the pharmacokinetics and biopharmaceutics cause. This happened around the year 2000, and after the revision of the guideline, the group was extinguished but soon after, a new PK drafting group, which I'm a member of, now it's a PK working party, was created in order to deal with clinical pharmacology and biopharmaceutical methods. This group is in existence for about 10 years now and undertakes very important tasks, including revision of the bioequivalence guideline again, and presently the modified equivalence guideline, as well as drafting opinions concerning pharmacokinetic issues. In the meantime, I became chairman to the Portuguese Medicines Advisory Board, or IPARMED, in 1992, and to a small but devoted group of PK assessors. All there. As a result of this activity, I believe I played an important role in developing drug regulation in Portugal. I am proud that the Ministry of Health awarded me the gold medal for this reason in the year 2009. Actually, I recently earned a few other awards, but I should mention in a very special way the one granted by my students. All this activity has been strongly intertwined with my work as a professor of pharmacokinetics. I believe that students have benefited from the overarching characteristic of the subject and know how important a tool it is for the work of pharmacists. I am also proud that students recognize this, even though sometimes only after having gone through the hardship of the pharmacokinetics examination and tests. As I told them, you only like a subject after you know it, inadequate depth. I am now closing another important part of my career. In September, I will cease to be the dean of my faculty. I would like to admit myself that I have been instrumental in the recent major development of this school. What I believe is that I played a role by allowing my colleagues to do their job. The tremendous development in research excellence that we achieved in the last 10 years is a consequence of a collective effort to raise the level of the research done in terms of financing and output, publication, PhD thesis. In particular, I am proud of having, among other contributions, created the first national master program in pharmacy, having been able to assist with the fundraising which allowed the completion of the first part of our new building, and being founder of the IMED Research Unit. This gives me one further reason to be proud of my school and my colleagues who collectively have built the assets that are keeping my faculty in the high rank of pharmaceutical science in Portugal. I wish them great success in the future of our faculty. My only sorrow is not having been able to even start the second part of the building. If there is one trait that I would like to stress to characterize the way I view my career, it will be trying always to be as helpful as possible. That is why I believe I was always ready in the line of duty, either as a dean, a faculty, or pro-rector to the University of Lisbon, or in the other multiple international activities in the European Association of Faculties of Pharmacy, the European Federation of Pharmaceutical Science, EUFEPS, the COST B15 and B25 actions, as well as the Conference of Ibero-American Faculties of Pharmacy, COIFA, which I am presently president of. In the year 2001, I was founder and president for the past 10 years of the Portuguese Society for Pharmaceutical Science. I should mention my dear, good friend, Benito del Castillo, who pushed me to the EAFP and the COIFA. What about the future? Experimental pharmacokinetics started from the 50s when bioanalytical tools were developed to support the existing theoretical framework. Pharmacokinetics became an indispensable tool in drug development. Within 10-15 years, the attrition rate due to PK reasons decreased from 40% to less than 20% by strong investment in silico modeling and simulation and early in vitro and preclinical studies. From the many examples for prediction of PK properties using modeling and simulation, we can infer that although a great progress has been achieved, the predictions are still not completely reliable. Pharmacokinetics has to be thought of, as always, but now more than ever, taking into consideration our imperfect measure of reality. But there are still questions to be answered. This is just a few examples. How to improve predictability of human pharmacokinetics. How to apply the new proposed concept of bioperformance, which is somehow related. How can PK contribute to the understanding of the disposition of nanomedicines, such that was discussed this afternoon? What is the best way to develop new modified release dosage forms from pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics? How to deal with biosimilars? How to assess bioequivalence in the case of non-biological complex drugs? Discussed that today. Questions are endless and keep coming. There is still a lot of work to be done. I believe I still have a role to play, but in the meantime, I now have other priorities. With these three little guys. Shall I teach them pharmacokinetic? No, it's boring. Shall I teach them how to blow a roof? No, Pedro and Rita will kill me. They already think I'm a little crazy. What I should do is to teach them music. It's harmless, and because it is my secret passion that I didn't mention before. Because there are too many of you to name individually, and I am afraid I forget some names, that's always the case, I finally would like to thank everyone who worked with me and supported me. Que pacientemente maturaram os maus momentos e se regozijaram nos bons momentos. For I must single out especially my wife Isabel, who gave me the driving force for accomplishment and the critical view that prevented me from making more mistakes than I did in the past and still usually do. Thank you to all of you for being part of my life, the puzzle of my life. Thank you.